Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my review of the book The Defenders of Shannara, The High Druid's Blade by Terry Brooks. This is the first in a trilogy of books that came out in the mid-2010s, written by Terry Brooks and his Shannara universe. And this is the first Shannara book that I've read in almost 2 years. I started reading Shannara in about 2017 with the original Shannara, and I started reading the books in publication order all the way through 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. And in 2021, I read the Legacy of Shannara trilogy, which includes Wards of Fairy and Bloodfire Quest, and also the Witch Wraith book. And those were entertaining. This trilogy made some promises and overall delivered, just not exactly in the way I wanted. And this was an interesting read because this is the first Terry Brooks book that really doesn't make any big promises. This is it's even though it's a start to a trilogy, it's kind of a standalone book in a way. When you read the book, you'll know what I mean. And it also is the smallest in scale. You know, in so many books, they have to go on this epic, huge quest that's going to take hundreds of pages of journey, and they have to go get a sword or get this magic, or they have to travel to a new continent, or they have to stop the Warlock Lord from ending the world, or they have to stop these hordes of demons from exiting the Forbidding or something. There's these huge plot-driven stories that are like, you know, the world is ending and we need to save, only our main character can save the world. And interestingly, that is not the case in this book. This is a book about a young man who is afraid for his family, and so he ends up making a deal with the Druids to protect the Druids and work for them if they will in return protect his family. And it's about him learning how to use his magic, learning how to be a protector of the Druids, while at the same time going on some cool adventures that are really small scale. And so it's a very different style book than Terry Brooks has ever written. And because of that, it was really fresh. And at the same time, it was a pretty short read, so it was very quick and it was easy to, speed through it as I was reading along. I was able to read this all in one day. If this book has any problems, it lies in some repetition that it falls into, but I'll talk about that in a second. First of all, let me talk about the opening of the book. This book has a 44-page, at least in this paperback version, a 44-page sequence where the main character's sister is captured by a very bad dude, and he has to go and rescue her. And that entire sequence is just a brilliant storyline. I think that he could have made an entire novella that's 150 pages, or even potentially made a whole novel that was just that storyline. That is, the way that he crafted that story is brilliant to me, and it's just the type of story I like to read. And so it was nice that was like a little opening. That was the little opening salvo of what the rest of the book would be. And then you have beyond that, he gets the sister back, but there's, he's trying to protect her, and so he goes on to work with the Druids, and so you get some montages of him learning with the Druids. And with most of these books, as I mentioned, you spend entire books traveling from one location to another, and this book, because of the airships and because of the nature of the travel, they're able to go across lands like that. They're able to go from the Southlands to Paranor, back to the Southlands, in a chapter and a chapter there and a chapter back. Which, in the original Sword of Shannara, it took half the book just to get up to Paranor. So it's a very interesting dynamic that this is a very fast-paced story. And because you add in the montages, the training sequences go by very quickly. And so we're constantly jumping from action scene to action scene to action scene throughout the book. And because of that, it's the fastest-paced book by far in his series. But as I mentioned, it's the smallest scale. There's this one villain who's a sorcerer named Arcanon, who is the primary villain throughout the book. And really, it looks like he'll be the villain through the series. But the villain in the beginning of the book takes the main character's sister and tries to use her as a bargaining chip for something. The problem with the book is that book keeps repeating the plot point of our main character going to either rescue his sister or going to fight Arcanon. It happens at least 3 times, and I think there's a fourth that was like really brief. But he keeps going to go to Arcanon's location in the book, and it was just like, it should have happened at the beginning, and it should happen at the very end. And it should have been like that's why we saw it at the beginning, because we're going to see it now. But because it just keeps happening throughout the book, it loses the impact. It loses the luster. This book should have been 60 pages shorter. If this book had ended 60 pages earlier, then it would have ended with the second ended with the second fight that they have, and it would have been perfect. But because there's that last 60 pages, they keep repeating the same beats over and over, and it becomes very repetitive and very boring at the end, which is a problem for Terry Brooks, because Terry Brooks does follow tropes a lot. He does reuse tropes, but he does them in new, interesting ways. So it's the reason that you can pick up a new book of his and be like, we've done this before, but I'm okay because this is fun. When he repeats plot elements within the same book, that's when it becomes a problem. So this doesn't stand up like some of his other books among the most upper echelons of Terry Brooks' writing. Like, it's not like The Sword of Shannara or The First King or the Shannara trilogy for me. This is not up there. But this is entertaining. It was a fun read. It was a good, I like spending time in this universe. I like reading about the main character, Paxton Lee. Interestingly, we don't actually have Umsfords to follow like we normally do. It's the Lees that we're following, and there's a reason that they're technically, the family lines have been intertwined because of intermarriage, and yes, so technically we are following Umsfords, but for all intents and purposes, we're following Lees in this storyline, and because of that, it's just a different dynamic than we normally get. And I liked the main character of Paxton Lee. He's a very good standard male fantasy protagonist character. He doesn't have, other than his flaming red hair, which you can see on this cover, which when I first saw these covers in the bookstores, I did not like them. I thought they looked too photorealistic. But now that I've had time, they've actually grown on me. And this one in particular, you can see the brush strokes for his hair and for the sword and for his cloak. And it makes him seem real kind of dark and broody. And then he has that medallion that's kind of flying out of him that you can kind of see on the edge. So I actually quite like the artwork now. He's like, other than the red hair being a defining trait, there's not too much. And of course, as there is with all Terry Brooks books, there are druids involved, and the Druid Order is just like the Jedi Order in Star Wars. Like, it feels so much like the Druids are the Jedi. There was a political thread throughout this book that felt a little bit too convenient, but it was different than most authors would write it, which is kind of why, because of how simple it was actually kind of refreshing, because most authors would try to make it deep and complex, and Terry Brooks is like, nah, I'm going to make it pretty easy. So it was a different choice, and sometimes by going the different choice, you become unique in and of yourself. And so even though he chose the easy path, it was actually, I think, a good move for him. So this is not gonna win any awards for Best Book of the Year or anything like that, and it's not going to win any awards among my highest ranking books. But it was entertaining, and I'm super happy that I read it, and I will be reading the rest of the books in the series, and I think they'll be lots of fun. And this trilogy seems to be lighter, and then we'll have a really heavy finale that I'll read next. But overall, I really enjoyed this book, and I look forward to reading more. I gave it like a 7.2 out of 10. It was an okay read. It was pretty good. It was pretty entertaining. But I'm sure there's other books I'm more excited for. So if you've read this book, did you have thoughts? What did you think of the plot? Reusing the same plot devices? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.